Live.
Hi, I'm Ted Nelson at the Internet Archive here
James
with...
Risberg.
Yep, with James. And since we didn't announce this beforehand, we'll just start talking and see if anybody chimes in and has any questions. So, in going through my physical archives, which I tried to downsize, which is very painful, I found a tape recording made in September of 1966 when I spoke at the RAND Corporation. The talk is included in my selected papers, or transcript of it, called Hard and Fast Thoughts for a Soft Copy World. I think several pages are omitted, unfortunately, in the selected papers, but this is the actual recording, quarter inch, and I'm sending it to Stanford in the hopes that they will digitize it so we can all listen to it. Now, my point of view has not much changed, that I've probably talked about issues of freedom and privacy on networks and what it's like for users and how it's going to have to be for naive users, and my views on publication. Whoop, there we go.
Yep.
Yep.
I'll be manning the comment section.
Okay, good. So, so I find that a great interest. I'll be interested to hear what I sounded like back in 1966, if it's actually retrievable.
How much do you think your opinions have changed since the 66?
Not a lot. My opinion that my system Xanadu would be the publication method of the future, that has changed because I screwed up and we didn't get our product out in time. It would not, probably the web would have prevailed, but we would have gotten visible pages with visible connections before the public as a concept, and the world would have had to adapt to it. And so I feel that not only have I lost out, but the whole world has lost out. I believe this is a very, very important concept.
Yeah. Have there been any other innovations in literature that you've seen over the last 40 years that excited you or you thought were steps in the right direction?
I don't. If you're working hard on something, you don't have time to look at a lot of other stuff. I mean, people send me things almost every day that say, please look at my project, it's based on your ideas. Well, what isn't? I mean, I have ideas in all directions. But, I mean, what isn't related? But, I have an assistant answer and say, basically, I have no time to look at other projects because I'm trying to do my own, as well as all the work downsizing and going through my archives, which is a huge task still. Anything coming in? Not yet.
Nothing coming in yet from viewers.
So you suggested I talk about the Economist piece this week.
Oh, it's exciting.
Yes, it was very nice. Yes, yesterday I saw it, but it actually came out on Wednesday, Wednesday the 13th, and that was a podcast by The Economist magazine in England. Now, The Economist is a highly respected, very intellectual magazine on political affairs in all areas, not just economic. And their podcast was about the anniversary of the web, but they had a nice segment of an interview with me and said, to understand his work, watch Xanadu Basics 1A, which was a terrific boost. And at the end, they said, it was really nice. They said that the World Wide Web was basically my idea in the 60s, which it was. And at the end, what was it? It said nicely, quote, this idea of fusing storytelling and computers affirms the vision of Ted Nelson at the very beginning of online networking. So that's an acknowledgement I like, because all we hear about is the web, blah, blah, blah.
The web just turned 30.
Yep.
So if you had to write a little message inside the birthday card, what would you say?
I wouldn't need to send one because they're getting enough. No one would read it.
Let's see, something else we've talked about.
By the way, Tim Berners-Lee did come to my 60th birthday party in Tokyo in 1997. Got a nice picture of us shaking hands at that point. When the first time I met Berners-Lee first time was in my office in Sausalito, and I don't remember it, but it'll be in my diary. The second time, we had dinner in Lexington, Massachusetts, and stayed up till 4 in the morning talking. And his wife admired my wristwatch, so I gave it to her. And we both videoed the event, but hanging on to videos, oh my. hanging onto media is very difficult. And curating the stuff. I did lots of videotapes over the years, and now I just send them to Stanford in the hopes that they will digitize them, which they say they will.
Yeah,
and make a film.
I've met some. There's what they're calling life logging, which is familiar.
Keeping diaries.
Yeah, keeping diaries, and I've met some people recently that are life logging with camera around their neck, recording 24/7. They're doing audio to transcription.
No, the person who was doing that first was Gordon Bell. Microsoft was. We visited him in San Francisco. He had this little red light going, and I haven't heard any complaints about it. But I've been told here at the archive now that they don't want you taking pictures because there was a complaint about people who don't know what you're saying.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, as it becomes more and more mainstream to be concerned about digital privacy, security, and these things are slowly entering the zeitgeist.
Digital privacy, help. I mean,
maybe an oxymoron.
Give me a break. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe an oxymoron, like military intelligence.
They know all about you. Google knows all about you.
Yeah, something I've been playing with recently was you got the app as well, Otter.
I got it and tried it. Yeah.
Voice transcription app.
And once again, it's like many things I've got but don't have time to use. The point is that the voice transcription is pretty good, but it has a very small vocabulary. It breaks everything. It breaks long words into short ones, which don't match. So you have to go through correcting and to type the whole thing over would be probably just as easy. I use a lot of, pardon me, long words mean a lot to me, and trying to express myself perfectly, and long words don't mean a damn thing to Siri or Otter.
Yeah, and that's interesting. There's probably some sweet spot between complexity of language and understanding on the other end. Though what you're talking about is mostly for your own reading.
Sweet spot. Well, either you understand or you don't. But I mean, there are degrees of understanding. Of course, a child has partial understanding. A person unfamiliar with some of the vocabulary has partial understanding, usually.
Yeah. There's even longer words that are more precise
if
indeed. They're beyond the vocabulary of your audience.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's the trouble. Someone like Gore Vidal or me who really likes to pin things with excellently chosen Latin words, or longish words that most people don't know anymore. I mean, I'm just thinking about the word prestidigitation, which was a very common word when I was a boy in the 40s. And it's a lovely pun because it used to mean magic. But it means fast-moving fingers. Presti meaning fast, and digitation, which is fingers, and of course refers to digital computers as well. But it's a joke that can't be made because nobody gets it.
It's lost. Yeah, it's interesting. I live with a few Russian speakers, and the structure of puns based on this kind of wordplay, right? Words that sound like other words but don't necessarily mean that.
Right.
There's a lot of lost in translation wordplay, right, between the Russian and the English.
It's like poetry. Poetry has all these allusions, unless it's Robert Frost who speaks extremely simply. But trying to, and of course, even popular music has allusions to things that nobody knows anymore.
Absolutely.
If you go a few decades back.
Language is hyper-contextual.
Yes.
I've got a comment about the Whole Earth catalog
Yes.
floating around behind us here.
Well, we're in the next to Brewster's office, so this is not. We didn't put it there, and I still have a copy someplace. And but the Whole Earth catalog was an interesting thought because it made you think, gee, I could make my own cheese. I could build my own wagons out of oak. I could raise goats. And the thing is, yeah, you could.
If you'd like to.
Yeah.
If you're so inclined,
But the point is that every initiative is a commitment. And the first 10% of anything is easy.
Yeah, there's an opportunity cost.
Right. To go to the 11% or so. Now we're talking investment of time and cutting off doing other things.
And cleaning up a lot of goat poop.
In that particular case.
Yeah.
There was somebody posed a Zen question. last night, which was, suppose an egg, a goose egg, is placed in a bottle and the goose grows up. How do you get the goose out of the bottle? And my question is, how did it grow up without being fed, watered, and having its poop cleaned out? So the Zen question isn't very clear to me. Oh, someone else came up with a great Zen question. So in in Buddhism, you're supposed to give up commitment and
Desire,
and there's another word I can't think of. But then so
attachment.
So what is a Buddhist wedding like? And the answer, and the correct Buddhist answer I was told was, next question.
Yeah, the idea, I mean, those kind of questions and kind of the Buddhist koan, that whole tradition was less about making sense and more about thinking in new categories, maybe as one of the guests out here just mentioned.
A frame of mind of positive thinking vagueness, I guess.
Yeah. Intentional ambiguity to just kind of your mind frame or your
right.
Your question.
But that doesn't help when you have to get down to problems. When you have to get not a goose out of the bottle, but a car out of the shop.
Yeah. How does a Buddhist get his car fixed? Maybe that's a better question.
Right. Next question.
Yeah. The mechanic just says, "Let it go, man."
Well, I've had friends who say, "Yep, time to let a car go."
Yeah, cycles of non-attachment and reality. So cycling back and forth. That's our input from.
That's a nice way of putting it, probably.
From Colby Serpa. Hey, Colby. We've met. A friend of mine.
Okay. So you cycle into non-attachment, and so you're not out of business. Well, okay. I have no basis. I take naps or try to rest and try to chill out, but getting into non-attachment, that's very hard.
It's kind of like...
I'm attached to everything, that's a problem.
Kind of like a metaphysical bicycle. Vehicle when that's convenient, pedestrian when that's convenient.
That's a very nice example. Very nice example, yes.
Yeah. We have a good friend I've been hanging out with on Twitter recently, MDF, inquiring about setting up a little recording session to do some voice chats. He's been doing some interesting
I don't make appointments, I'm sorry. I give over my Friday afternoons at the Internet Archive, and the rest of the week is to myself. Yeah. So it has to be for money or for some very important purpose, because I just don't have time.
Yeah. Maybe we can do something remote or something along those lines.
It has to be on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah. So cycling back to the whole Earth catalog. Was this something that you read regularly growing up?
Well, no.
Or when it was...
I was delighted by it when it came out, and Stuart, whose houseboat is 3 down from mine.
Stuart Brand.
Yeah.
The
founder of the whole catalog. He's a marvelous, incredible guy, and he knows how to manage big projects with volunteers. Whereas I can't manage anybody, because delegating means supervision, and the person is not going to do it your way, and so for all my projects I just have to do everything myself. But anyway, so Stuart created this thing. First he had the Whole Earth truck store selling miscellaneous objects, then he had the Whole Earth catalog, and he asked, why haven't we seen a picture of the whole Earth yet? And finally one came out of NASA, I don't know how, and that went on the cover, because it certainly brought us together. To see the Earth as a unified object had a tremendous psychological impact. When was it, about 1968, 70? And it did give a sense of a unified biosphere, a unified common fate, which is getting darker now for the whole planet.
Do you think that the hope was to unify people around, we're actually all on this ball together, right?
Well, that was the reaction of a lot of people, but somehow it didn't change a lot of issues. There are always issues, there are always disagreements, there are always things to argue about.
Yeah, no matter how eloquent, like Carl Sagan's pale blue dot speech or any of these other kind of let's unify and be humans. Do you think that
Well, what is
there?
it? Unify suggests somehow we're going to put down our disagreements. And there are lots of people who think that's somehow possible. And would that it were. But it's essentially like zenning out. Saying, okay, no more problems, no more issues. I don't have to go to the store, and this person's not in my way, and he doesn't owe me anything. So all issues remain, and the hopes of unification do not squash them. The problem is negotiating away, or they're being swept away by other happenings.
Yeah, I mean, there's the unlikely event of conflict being removed entirely,
Right.
as you say. But do you think over the last 40 years, we maybe as a collective have gotten more effective at conflict resolution? Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good question. Have you seen more effective conflict resolution?
I know people who specialize in it, and it's very expensive. And they work with they work with both sides in hotel years and they try to find common paths. And this is extremely difficult. And so the fact that most conflicts are actually resolved by unpleasant means, such as lawsuits or murder or war, is and has always been the nature of things. And I don't like things. Politics. See, every individual is like a country. It's a political entity with history, friendships, grudges, intentions, hopes, difficulties, and resolving this in the context of others is always the problem.
Absolutely. I mean, that's something I've been studying myself, these kind of interpersonal conflict resolution and mediation practices.
Interpersonal, yeah. And if it's just one-on-one, then the one person on one end, it's a bitterness thing. Maybe something can be done.
And do you see, and obviously, I mean, in the beginning, like the Engelbart dream, I suppose, was harmony through digital infrastructure.
Yes.
Right?
And as I said in my eulogy for Doug, he was naive. And Gandhi and Martin Luther King pretended to be naive, and Doug Engelbart was the real thing. Believing that everyone would be motivated to cooperate, and not knowing about evil and corporate politics. I've found out twice that in a corporation, your enemy is not another company; it's the other department. And Doug's experience was in the Navy, where he experienced total cooperation between everybody. But it was pointed out by Nicholas Carroll that he wasn't quite aware that there were admirals above assuring that it was total cooperation.
That's something my dad, after 30 years in the Army, he's definitely got a lot to say about civilians and their lack of organization.
Lack of organization.
Yeah. There's a discipline and a following orders that's lacking from civilian society that the former military members definitely miss.
And they somehow think that it could be imposed.
Well,
so that mindset may very well be why military like to take over countries.
It's in the structure, right? From within the organization.
See, I don't understand that part of the military mind.
Yeah, from within that, kind of the medium is the message, in that it shapes us, right? And if the medium of command,
it shapes the medium. It shapes the communication.
It shapes the communication. So if the communication is shaped like military hierarchical communication, grounded in discipline and following orders and execution, then what you're going to do is both either attract minds that are also shaped like that, or form and mold young minds that are not yet shaped,
or
into that
control the people who don't like it but are in it as long as they have to be.
Yeah. Squish the minds into the box.
Yeah.
And it's effective in many contexts.
So I just watched one of my videos, my zigzag introduction. I love the ending where it says that where I said the computer traditions of rectangularity and hierarchy are imposed on everything, but you should not impose these fictitiously on the teeming complexity and anarchy of human life, something like that.
So
You can, by imposing rules and enforcing them, then you are constricting this anarchy, but only for a little while.
yeah, you can nudge the flow. You can
flow.
shape
I like
the channel,
that.
but you can't stop the river.
Well, but the point is, by standing in the river, you are not. You're shaping the flow locally.
Yeah, I was recently talking to.
By the way, that was my famous religious experience I talk about all the time. Water moving around my fingers and reconnecting differently is related to that.
I think we talked about that last stream,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And then there was Heraclitus, the philosopher, said you can't step in the same river twice because it's different molecules. Everything's changed.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever recounted this story. I was talking with a competitive whitewater kayaker.
Competitive whitewater kayaker.
Yeah,
Okay.
so a very, very extreme kayaker through the rapids and that sort of thing. He was talking about his philosophy of like how you even navigate that sort of water, right? Because you're in this river. It's moving very fast.
Right.
You are not, by any means, really steering your boat.
Well,
you are placing yourself.
You're doing your best to stay on and stay up.
You're placing yourself in the flow.
Yeah.
And you're controlling the angle at which you're residing in the flow.
And that's very much like the rest of life.
Yeah. Exactly. And that was the analogy he was drawing and the one I'm redrawing,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of related to this. Those watching, there's not a ton of you, but topics of conversation, questions, drop them in the comments section. I'm taking a look at it. We have Chris Mez. Love you guys. Keep up the good work.
Good.
Love you, Chris.
Yeah.
Can't wait to talk next week.
Yeah.
Do you have a better name for social media? Because frankly, it's not so social.
Yes, cattle pens. That's what I've said, called them in the past. In other words, Twitter and Facebook are designed to hold you and to shape your movement and to shape your communications and to their benefit. And it's socially visible, but socially visible under constraints which are imposed. Well, of course, all social events, for example, take the idea that they used to have dances. So dance, you would invite someone to a dance, or you would come stag and dance with people, but someone would set up the orchestra. It was all an arrangement that was socially conventional, but nobody was taking, well, maybe people were taking notes, but it wasn't like today where Facebook knows all about you and sells you, and I don't know about Twitter. I don't understand, I mean, I can't find my way through Twitter. All these things require commitment and concentration to understand. Who's got time?
Yeah, that might be interesting. So Xanadu from the beginning was a literature platform. It was a system for evolving how we write.
Well, not evolving. It was a system for. It was intended as a literary genre. Yes. Yeah. Which extended conventional sequential text with connection in a way that anyone could see and understand.
Yeah. So not pointedly not a communication platform. It wasn't meant for.
Writing is communication. What are you talking about?
Well, I'm not a conversational platform.
Right.
Right. Not a. It's not, as we've discussed many times, not a alternative to Twitter or Facebook or social media or this, right? So you say Twitter's.
But I write things and I publish them, and they have been one column because that's all you can do.
Yeah. So, do you have thoughts on what a effective tool for that conversational aspect of conversational social media could look like? Twitter, that's what it's shooting for. It wants to be a giant global chat room.
Well, it is, but well, no, it's a giant system of hoses. And someone at the Media Lab said, we have access to the entire Twitter pipe. Well, the immensity of that slosh and all those hoses that are followed randomly. What was the question?
Question was, what is like a conversational social media that you would use even look like if you
I
had
have no
thoughts?
idea. No, I don't have thoughts on that. Because, so, on the YouTube channel, for example, people make comments, and I could comment back, but I don't. So that gives you a little tree of comments on the side. And this tree of comments on the side seems to be a convention that a lot of things happen. But yeah, I don't work in that area. I'm too busy concentrating on what I have.
Something else we've talked about.
By the way, I did talk to Marshall McLuhan once. So McLuhan is the guy who said, the medium is the message.
Mm-hmm.
And he was extremely popular in the 1960s. Actually, I was an early follower of McLuhan because I read his stuff when I took my first linguistics course my sophomore year in '56. And I read his magazine Explorations, and I'm really moved by it. And then he came out with the medium is the message. That was great. And then that had a tremendous impact. And then I got to have lunch with him in Canada. And he was a wonderfully charming man, very warm. I just loved him personally. But I tried to tell him about hypertext, and he began this canned speech. Well, a computer has no way of varying its sequence of operation. So he didn't understand it right there from the get-go. No way he could imagine computer media. But I imagine computer media from the auteur point of view. So as a filmmaker, the film is something you do as a finished product. As an author, the text is something you do as a finished product. And being able to have Xanadu for text or movies with parallel connections, that was my proposed genre for extending these media in the auteur sense, because as the author, you're controlling the whole thing. Now that's different from the slosh of social media, but it's a legitimate occupation.
Yeah. So in a world with authors or filmmakers creating these massive amounts of like transcoded media,
Mm-hmm.
what is browsing that collection of media look like in your vision?
I have no idea. There could be all kinds of indices. And who knows, Google? I mean, nobody could predict Google. We, with Xanadu, the classic Xanadu had three enfilades, that was search structures, which were, one was for documents, one was for versions, and one was for links. And they could be browsed, all these could be browsed, and found and listed. But that's not a currently available thing. I was very proud of that enfilade invention. So in 1970, I had 3 or 4 different. I was trying to build a word processor, which would then later grow to the Xanadu project, and this became. Hi, we're doing a webcast. So at that time, there was no such. The term word processor did not exist, or did it? There was one machine out called the Wang, which was a $10,000 device for secretarial input, and we wanted to have another one on the market. And we were going to do it on a small machine with teletype input, and so I invented the enfilade, which was a way of editing the content without bringing it over to RAM in a memory. The JOT interface, which I'm extremely proud of, it's on the web. Pardon me, it's on the Internet Archive, because this was before screens. And so, but it would allow the user and the reader to move around in huge text easily. You press the space bar to go over the next word or the next sentence or the next paragraph. And in what was a very intricate flowchart. So to explain the flowchart to the programmer, I had to invent the lollipop language, which was a way of representing the state you were in. So if you drew a lollipop and you put the character in the top of the line, so if it's a space, if the user types a space, then if that's the condition, this is what you do. If that's the condition, this is what you do. If that's the condition, this is what you do. So that's a notation for sorting complicated keystrokes. And I later found out that I had independently invented what's called a Mealy machine, a state machine, for what to do under specific, in particular states, under particular circumstances. Well, anyway, so all of that was for the first word processor. And then the enfilade got generalized in the 1979 Xanadu group. So explaining what I've done to today's generation, practically out of the question, because you have to understand what was and what might have been as distinct from the cattle pens and structures of today. Last night I had to explain to a very intelligent lawyer the difference between the internet and the web, the difference and what a website was and what a URL was and so forth and so on. But he had just stayed away from all of this, which is rather interesting.
Maybe not a bad idea. let the professionals deal with it. Something we talked about before was school, models of school, and how those could change. You had some thoughts around education and where it could go.
Yeah, I had a proposal in the 2002s. Marlene loved it. Marlene, my late wife. And that was that instead, okay, there was I can't remember his name now, an educational theorist who said, don't teach them, tell them what they have to learn and let them choose the method. So extending that to ordinary education, say, okay, you're going to have to learn this. Now we're going to hold a fair. And these different providers will say, I can teach you this and that for so many credits, and you have a number of credits to spend. So that instead of the imposition of particular teachers and a particular curriculum, we turn it into the experience of shopping, which everyone loves. So that was one model. Another model is the gentleman, I couldn't help it. I recently registered generalistacademy.com. It's a wishful domain, because I'm sure I'll never create it. But the Generalist Academy being an academy for teaching generalists. Now it happens that in California, the private schools are very expensive and have almost no legal rules. So you can do almost anything, and that gives you the freedom to find new forms of education and new ways to help people educate themselves. And it doesn't pay to be a generalist, unfortunately, but there are some of us who can't stop being interested in everything, and that's one of the problems.
What do you see as the role of the generalist in society?
The problem is that the role, the generalist in society has to find his own way, and that means being a consultant, perhaps being a therapist, possibly being an in-house guru, but they're hard to, that's a very hard slot to get. So being a general, or you can be an expensive speaker, but that's hard to get too. So being a generalist has no role in society except that people may enjoy your company.
Some people get paid a lot to let other people enjoy their company, I guess.
Right, but the people get paid a lot to enjoyed the company. Well, would you call so Wozniak gets paid a lot for his lecture. I wouldn't call him a generalist. But he does a lot of things, and he has become a generalist. But his specific talent is extraordinary because originally he was able to look at a computer chip and say, well, it's supposed to do this, but look what it also does. And so he built the Apple I and later the Apple II using chips in ways they hadn't been planned to use, and therefore was able to make the computer much simpler and with a smaller chip count, and essentially punning the use of these different things. So that was an incredible talent he started with. Now, as a speaker with his mailing list, he has become a generalist, but that's because he has the leisure to do it.
Any other generalists that you've been fond of over the years?
Bucky Fuller was a great generalist, but like Douglas Engelbart, he believed everyone would cooperate for the good of the world. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And cooperation means obliterating our differences, the things we have to argue about, the things we have to settle. And so, but Bucky was wonderful. He would go on for hours. I went to one of his lectures at Harvard, and he went on for 5 hours, and nobody left, except to go to the bathroom. And he was extraordinary, and incredibly devoted, and would travel all over the world. So he wore 2 wristwatches, one for the place he was at, and one for the next place he was going to be. And I guess they were 24-hour watches, so he would know. But he was an extraordinary guy. I was a fan of his when I was 10 years old. When he'd gone into decline in the 1930s, Bucky was very popular. In the 1960s, in the 1940s, when I was or late 40s, I became a fan of his. And then in the 60s, he became popular again because of I don't know, partly because he patented these geodesic domes. And the big ones leaked. They were no good for housing. People thought they'd be great to live in a dome. No. But the small ones are used for the dew line, the radars that protected us from incoming planes. And you can see one on top of Mount Tam here in Marin County. And I believe that's because they had the structural strength without steel reinforcement, which would interfere with the radar. And I'm guessing at that.
We have.
By the way, there's a very interesting video somewhere of Bucky Fuller while he was at Black Mountain College. Black Mountain was an amazing place because it had Merce Cunningham and John Cage and Bucky Fuller and a lot of other people became famous later. Essentially able to do their own thing, but because the state was beginning to impose rules, they elected to dissolve the college rather than have to comply with the rules. And so everybody went their own way. But there's a great video of him at Bucky at Black Mountain College trying to assemble a geodesic dome, and it all falls down. So you keep trying.
People will continue to build new domes, I assume. Well, there's some very interesting new building. We were looking at 3D printing buildings recently. There's also a couple of different, something called Hyper which is the first earthquake-resistant building material you can make out of pretty much recycled material that you can... It's not pretty. It looks like sandbags piled up, but it's whatever it's made out of is this engineered stuff you can kind of mold a building out of.
Well, the pyramids, by the way, were essentially poured. They were sandbags piled up with a facing put on them. People disagree about this, but I think it's very clear. You can see where the facing has come off on one of these sandbag-like looking things are inside. So they had a supply of concrete-like bogs that they could use for that at that time. So that's probably one good way of making it. Just make it large. But the problem is making things earthquake-proof and smallish.
Yeah.
I wonder about that because they say, well, this is earthquake-proof, and I guess they have a prediction of what the cyclicality, what the frequency of the earthquake will be, and the magnitude. And I wonder about whether these predictions are necessarily true.
Yeah,
I've been in a lot of earthquakes.
the resonance with the ground is going to
Right.
play into that quite a bit.
Are we running down?
Yeah, we're getting near the end here.
Well, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. So let's see if anyone have you read any Christopher Alexander? I haven't heard of him personally.
No, I haven't read any Christopher Alexander, but I'll tell my Christopher Alexander story.
Please do.
I met him under unusual circumstances. I had a car, it was a wonderful car, a Lincoln something or other, which I bought for $1,000. And the engine was strong enough to stand it on end. It was a mighty engine. And, for example, once I was going south on 280, and I was passed by a Porsche going about 10 miles an hour faster. I said, well, I'll have a little fun. So I gunned it, and we raced for about a mile and a half. Then coming to a left turn, I think I'll slow down. And sure enough, right around the corner was a cop who nabbed the Porsche. I was driving this car through Berkeley and foolishly attempted to make a U-turn on a narrow street. So there I was, stuck. So I'm blocking the street. I knocked on the door. This was before cell phones. And it was Christopher Alexander's house. So we had a friendly chat while Christopher Alexander being the architect who wrote a pattern language, a very interesting metaphysic about how to build languages. And at any rate, we had a nice chat until the guy from AAA came. And then the AAA guy, in trying to move my car, smashed Alexander's fence. So this became an additional difficulty. But there you are.
That's a very specific way to meet a person.
Well, yeah, I've had a lot of run-ins with people under strange circumstances. For example, Paolo Soleri, the great architect, who built this impossible but aesthetically pleasing thing called Cosanti. And then
Been there.
Yeah, I tried to find it, but I didn't get there. I missed a wedding trying to find it.
I'll be there in May.
Hey, all right. So anyway, then our Cosanti. But again, these were impossible but visionary. And I had drinks with him once, and he said, yeah, the building codes killed us. Because there is no way within the building codes, which mandate certain specifics, to do hardly anything visionary.
Yeah, the visionary stuff. There's a big movement now, some calling the seasteading movement, where seasteading as opposed to homesteading. Sea as in on the water.
Seasteading, yes.
Yeah, so a lot of
so on a boat there are no
building codes.
And
so they're moving off land to where you can do more interesting things with buildings, like modularize, hook. You need this type of building right now. Hook it on. No, unhook it, float it over to this other town that needs it. Why do we both need a soccer stadium? Right? You float it around.
Yeah, but building floating objects has constraints of its own.
Has constraints, but we're pretty good at it now.
Well, yeah, but now another point is that rolling stock has very, very few constraints. If you're on your own property, you can have anything that rolls. See, I'm involved with a reserve farm where we can't build anything, but anything that rolls is not considered building. But if it's rolling and on the highway, it has to have a license of some kind, either a trailer or an autonomous vehicle. But these give you certain freedoms of construction and internal mechanism that the building codes do not.
Interesting. Innovation lives in the gray areas between regulations, perhaps.
Exactly so. Okay, here's another one for you. There is a vaccine against Lyme disease, and it's apparently perfectly good. FDA killed it because of lawsuits. People were suing variously because people sue. And so you can't get it for yourself, but you can get it for your dog. The question is, can we find veterinarians who can be bribed to give you this vaccine?
Well, everyone's got a price.
Well, that's it. Or some some other loophole. For example, I'm sure that a veterinarian, under extreme circumstances, can treat a fallen person.
Good Samaritan laws cover the application of Lyme disease vaccines.
Might be.
A lot of people start slipping and falling in front of
Yeah, he
offices.
wasn't breathing, so I had to give him this vaccine. Yeah, that kind of.
Or maybe we can just play with the definition of dog, loosen that up.
That would be very good. Because a dog is a person.
Yeah, dogs are people too.
Not
does the inverse.
A corporation is a legal person, but a dog is not. Maybe we can change that.
I think we could start a movement. We'll have to go to Twitter though. There'll need to be a hashtag.
Love it.
All right. Want to wrap up?
Yeah, I think if no one says anything about that.
Nope. If there was a vaccine to cure stupidity, how would we get the anti-vaxxers to take it? That's the final vaccine-related question.
Well, that means that stupidity. There are forms of stupidity which are communicated by not by humans' communication, but by viruses and bacteria. But well, your joke is great. Let's just leave it at that. Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thanks for watching.
Hypercast number 4 in the books.
We enjoyed it.
We'll be back next week, most likely.
Great.